Movie Nut here with a review for Mickey's Christmas Carol, the 1983 animated short subject, featuring a plethora of beloved classic Disney characters like Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Goofy, and of course Scrooge McDuck. The story, basically put, is a Disneyfied retelling of the classic Charles Dickens story, which centers on a selfish rich man, Ebenezer Scrooge, here played by Scrooge McDuck, who is a general humbug and sourpuss in life, and is very tight with his money, oftentimes overworking and underpaying his associate Bob Cratchit. However, one night, on Christmas Eve, the ghost of his former partner visits him and tells him that 3 spirits will visit him in an effort to change his ways and show him the error of his choices. And thus, Scrooge begins a journey of self-discovery and understanding the true meaning of not just Christmas, but of goodwill to all men, and becomes a better person for it. Now, when it comes to acting, this is where it gets a little bit trickier than the norm, because really here it's more about these Disney characters who take on these roles. Though I'll quickly comment on the voices, which are consisted of beloved Disney veterans like Wayne Allwine, Hal Smith, Will Ryan, and of course Alan Young as Scrooge McDuck. And all of them, as you would expect, turn in great performances, and in turn, the characters they play turn in great performances, everyone being cast perfectly. Now, it's a no-duh that Scrooge McDuck plays Scrooge in this story, and he does it perfectly. He's every bit the stern, despisable, stubborn old man that Scrooge was in the original story, and Alan Young really sells that with his great vocal performance. And of course the other Disney regulars like Mickey Mouse as Bob Cratchit, Donald Duck as Scrooge's nephew, Fred, and even the ghosts themselves played by Jiminy Cricket, Willie the Giant, Pete as the Ghost of Christmas Future, and of course Goofy as Jacob Marley, who get some great little slapstick and comedy courtesy of the chains, which make for a great bit of ironic humor, fit their roles perfectly and get some great lines here and there, the most well-known being Willie's line about chocolate pot roast with yogurt, or as he tries to pronounce, pistachios. Now, of course, this couldn't be a review about an animated film if I didn't talk about, well, the animation and the visuals. The animation, frankly, is pretty standard for Disney. It's not among their very best. It's certainly not Pinocchio. But even so, the characters move smoothly, are very well designed, and even allow for some great moments, such as later on in the film when Mickey cries at Tiny Tim's grave, which, even though it's a very simple animation of a tear, it still gets the point across. Or even when there's the scene where the Cratchits have Christmas dinner and Tim and Bob look at each other, just simply moving their heads toward each other and looking into each other's eyes, and it manages to be simple, but it's still every bit as tender as it should be. However, the real money is in the design work and the backgrounds. They look beautiful, having a lovely painted feel to them, and actually look a lot like old Victorian illustrations, certainly the kind that would have been used originally during the original printing of Christmas Carol back in the Victorian age. Plus, the colors allow for some great mood, notably during the Christmas Future segment, where the vivid reds and blacks really create a depressing, almost hellish feel. And likewise, the score by Irwin Kostal, who you might know as one of the people behind West Side Story and Pete's Dragon, along with Charlotte's Web, does a good job here, conveying the proper Christmassy atmosphere with the music and creating a very jovial sense. However, when the film needs to become sad or emotional, the music tones down and you get some beautiful woodwind moments here and there, especially in the graveyard. A testament to how using very simple orchestration can create such a response from the viewer. And of course, finally we come to the script. Now here there isn't really that much to comment on, which is not normally what I would say, since script is almost always the biggest slice of the pie when it comes to film reviewing. But the fact is, it's a Christmas Carol. Everybody knows this story. And there's really not much new ground either to cover by talking about it or in the film itself. However, I have to give the team at Disney praise for being able to tell this story in less than half an hour. They managed to pack in all the character development, emotional moments, and even some great lines of dialogue and humor into such a short frame of time, and it's testament to their craftsmanship and the reverence they have for the story. Plus, it's important to remember that Christmas Carol, though we very often think of it as a happy, jolly story, is in fact quite dark at points, and it very much fits into that great tradition of almost Victorian horror literature, which isn't surprising given that Dickens, the original writer, was himself a child labourer at youth and had experienced first-hand poverty, and so this was very much his way of informing the rich of the harsh realities of life for those less fortunate. And even though it's Disney, they don't really tone this down. There are in fact quite a few unsettling moments in the film and quite sad. Mostly the stuff with Tiny Tim, which again, given the short time frame, they do conjure up a great emotional investment in the character, and you do feel bad for Cratchit and his family when they lose Tim. And in turn you buy Scrooge's legitimate sadness at the loss of the child, and thus the catalyst for his change. The darker moments, such as the graveyard and the opening of the grave in the ground, are pretty haunting. And again, the use of the strong, powerful colours, contrasting with the blacks, help create a real hellish atmosphere, and you do feel Scrooge's fear as he's faced with this horrifying prospect. Which, again, given how short the film is, they crammed a lot of detail in here, and you care about each of these people. And so by the end, when Scrooge mends the error of his ways and has that wonderful little scene where he's in the rocking chair with all of the Cratchit children, it's a very heartwarming moment, and it feels completely sincere and doesn't feel saccharine or sappy, as it could have very easily done if it was handled in a more ham-fisted manner. Now, don't get me wrong, despite what I said, the film isn't 100% perfect, but it's pretty damn close. Even though the fact that they crammed a lot of details in here at such a short length is very impressive, part of me wishes Disney had put the money in this to make a proper feature film, or at least maybe something for television. That way we could have seen them explore a lot more of the darker aspects of the story and delve into a lot more detail about Scrooge's past and how that made him into the person he is. Most notable omissions include details like Scrooge's childhood, which I for one would have loved to have seen, as it's always, along with the Tiny Tim scene, probably one of the most heartbreaking scenes in the film, given that you see the origins of Scrooge and his disdain for Christmas, but at the same time you see the love he has for his sister, which isn't here, and it takes out a good bit of emotion from the story, and Scrooge's character thus isn't as well-rounded as he is in other versions of the story. Plus, I would have liked to have seen in the middle section concerning Christmas Present more of the slums and the poorer parts of Victorian London rather than just the Cratchits. Again, I understand why they omitted it, but it would have been nice if it was kept in there, as it was just another little scene and another little Dickensian touch showing what society was like back then and what the rich were missing out or ignoring. Not only that, but Fred, played by Donald Duck here, really gets the shaft and only appears a few times in the film, which again downplays Scrooge's character and takes away some more development, as we don't see him fully appreciate the love that his nephew has for him. And again, it's disappointing, and really the flaws of this film aren't so much mistakes or screw-ups, but rather just omissions that, while they don't ruin or break the film, far from it, it would have been nice if they were there, as it would have contributed much more to the emotional heart of the movie, given how much is already here, and how, if they had a little bit more money, they could have really run with that and perhaps create the all-time greatest version of the Christmas Carol story. But let's not cry over spilt wine here. What's here is really, really good, and I would definitely recommend it. And so I must give Mickey's Christmas Carol a high silver star. It's a terrific version of the story and a great way to get your younger siblings and children into this classic tale of redemption. And hey, if you grew up with this story back in the 80s and 90s, it's always great to have a revisit down memory lane and get the Christmas spirits in gear. So, that's that, people. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and well, God bless us, everyone.